There we go. So we have Jennifer, or I guess who's lovingly known as JJ.
Sorry, I set you up. Sorry.
Jennifer J. Palumo.
I'm just happy to be called anything, so really whatever works.
Just call.
Yeah, just call.
She's a freelance writer, a Forbes Women contributor, and featured in the documentary Vegas Baby. Ashley Hardy, she's an infertility survivor, consultant, licensed social worker, and a fertility advocate. Maya Grobel, she's a licensed clinical social worker, a psychotherapist, co-founder of Empower, and producer star of the documentary One More Shot. Tara Brandner, she's a doctorate family nurse practitioner, fertility coach, and founder of the only infertility nonprofit in North and South Dakota. And Candace Clark Trinisheri, I'm so sorry, I butchered that. Trinisheri, thank you. She is author of the best-selling book, Dream Redefine: The Struggle and Success Through Infertility as a Woman of Color. She's also co-founder of Infertility Warriors and featured in the documentary One More Shot. So as you can see, we've got a fantastic panel today. So I'm going to open up and just ask each panelist to just give us a brief overview of who you are and your journey. Anyone?
All right, I will start because I'm I think I'm the oldest person too on the panel, which means my eggs are long gone. So I might as well dive into that is my uterus. Okay, so my name is Jennifer J. Palumo. I had unexplained infertility, which there's just nothing like having your reproductive organs be an enigma. Very frustrating. And I started trying to conceive around age 35. I just turned 35. And I thought, like almost everyone, that if you're in a 1 mile radius of sperm, you'd conceive without any issue. But it just wasn't happening. And I learned quickly that while everyone's fertility is different, and obviously I had some sort of issues, that being 35, 36, it actually makes more of a difference than you think. In the real world, you're not old, but in the fertility world, you're like Betty White, I love, but not terribly fertile. So basically, it took several years, several IVFs. I was not a good responder, and definitely exhausting all of my finances and insurance, which I'm sure a lot of you can relate to. I did a clinical trial just because it was free to get an IVF cycle. So I injected myself with a mystery drug because I was that desperate to just get the access to care that I needed. And on my last IVF, I retrieved 13 eggs. I only had 1 embryo, even though I paid for more. And luckily that embryo stuck around, and he's now my 9-year-old son. And since then, I've become very, very active in the infertility community, certainly advocating. I helped pass the FAFTA bill here in New York last year. We passed CPSA this year. The FAFTA bill is to have access to IVF treatment. You get 3 cycles in New York now. And CPSA was to make paid gestational carriers legal in New York, which, by the way, in New York, I can't believe it took us this long, for crying out loud. I'm very active in Advocacy Day for Resolve. I write about infertility. I'm just basically trying to pay it forward as much as possible, because when I was in the trying to conceive trenches, I could not get out of bed. Every time I got my period, I remember one time I went to bed at 4 in the afternoon, and I feel like I stayed in bed the entire weekend. You know, it was like a Friday all the way until Monday, until I had to work again. And the reason I stay active is I know that somewhere someone is like me then, in bed, not able to advocate for themselves. And so I really always keep that top of mind. And that's what continues to motivate me to stay involved in the community and connect with amazing womb warriors like the people on this panel. So that's me in a nutshell.
Yay, Jay. You're a really hard act to follow, so maybe I'll just attempt here. My name's Maya Grobel, and I'm a therapist, and I primarily work with fertility patients and people who are building their families in alternative ways. And my journey started in like 2010. So I feel like that's way back in the day. You know, I was 30 years old, started trying ovulation, temperature, that whole mess, Clomid, you know, all of that stuff. And then when I was 32, I finally went to see a reproductive endocrinologist. And I feel like just a little plug for early intervention and advocating for get checked, even if you are 30, and do yoga and eat organic food, because that that does not mean that your fertility is not potentially impacted anyway. So I went and I got checked by a reproductive endocrinologist when I was 32 and found out I had diminished ovarian reserve. Again, don't know why, but it quickly sent us down the road of IVF. So we did an IVF cycle, but didn't have any viable embryos to transfer. And there really is nothing like that feeling where you muster up all the physical and emotional and mental and financial resources that you have to do IVF. And then you do the whole thing and there's nothing to transfer. So that was a pretty devastating moment, a low point, as we say. And then, you know, I had a sister who was willing to donate eggs to me, and she's smarter than I am. And she's actually a doctor. And so I took her up on her offer and we did an egg donation cycle. And I did have 2 transfers from that, 2 embryo transfers, but nothing worked. So didn't achieve a pregnancy. And then we sprinkled in some IUIs because that's what you do when you have downtime, right? You just kind of do some IUIs. And eventually I landed on embryo donation, which is not something you wake up one day and decide that's the way you're going to build your family. It comes after exploration of some other options first, but it's the option that led me to the most amazing little human who is now 6 years old. I have a 6-year-old daughter through embryo donation. And it was a rough road. And during the process, my husband and I documented everything. We filmed this. Like Jay, I really felt a sense, and as a social worker, I guess too, I felt a sense like, why don't people talk about this? Why should I feel ashamed that my ovaries, you know, are cold or whatever was going on? You know, it's like, and I didn't find a lot of support and community until I kind of created it. So I had a blog that I was writing and started filming, and Candace was gracious enough to let us into her life and home and let us film her. And we interviewed a lot of different people who built their family in just different ways. And it opened my brain and my heart up to, if you want to have a family, you can. Sometimes you have to get creative and you have to pivot a little bit. And be flexible. And so I learned that very important lesson along the way. And we made a film that was on Netflix for 2 years. We were very lucky that got out in the world, called One More Shot, and it's now on Vimeo on demand. And now I'm really focused on my 6-year-old and a new company that I co-founded called Empower with Moxie, that's just specifically about embryo donation and touches on different third-party reproduction and things like that. Because like Jay, I felt the need to turn lemons into lemonade and try to connect and just support people going through this, because there really is nothing. Yeah, it's a very specific experience, I think. And once you're a fertility warrior, you're always a fertility warrior, and can just really connect and understand the process. So that's me. Should I pass the baton somewhere? Candace.
I'll go. Okay.
Oh, you'll go. Yeah, Ashley.
Yeah, I'll go. Maya and Jay, you guys are amazing. So I am Ashley. I currently run ashleylhardy.com, which is a digital platform that provides support to families going through the infertility journey. So I currently run a support group called Sacred Womb. I offer coaching sessions, and I also have e-resources that are available on my website as well as a blog. I guess I'm probably the newest to this infertility world. My journey started in 2017, about 30 days after my husband and I got married. He had to rush me to the hospital because I was in excruciating pain, and I was told that my tubes were basically defective, which is called hydrosalpinx, and that I would never have children. And that's kind of what I was left with. So as you can imagine, I was in shambles. My husband was in shambles. We just didn't know what was next because we never imagined our road to starting a family to be difficult until it is. And so we jumped right into the fertility world because of my tubes. So we were told that, you know, the only way for you to have a child is to go through IVF. Um, Unfortunately, insurance makes you do IUIs first. So we had to go through that whole process of, you know, medication, the IUIs, and then we finally get to IVF after 4 failed cycles of IUI. We did about 5 rounds of IVF. Um, and as you can imagine, that takes a toll on you mentally, spiritually, physically, and financially, because eventually, like Jay said, insurance runs out, and you have to figure out alternative ways to pay for your treatment. Um, and so through that process, we actually got a call about adopting a little girl. And um, we decided to take her in. At the time, she was 6 weeks old, with an array of medical issues. But, you know, we welcomed her into our home. About a week after that, we were told it was now a reunification case. So we are still, she's going to be 2 in June, and we are still going through the process of trying to adopt her, and goal changes and all those sorts of things. Right after she came into our home, about 6 months later, I got pregnant. And she is now Kennedy, who is 8 months old. Um, Through this journey, I really, being a social worker and a mental health clinician like Maya, I am trying to find the purpose in the pain. And that's what birthed AshleyLHardy.com and inspired me to pour into other women and provide a service and support, and just be that place of peace for women going through things, that voice of reason that I feel that I found hard to find during my journey. So that's a little bit about me and what I do. Candace?
Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to be on this panel with all of you. And I have to say that what I love about all of our stories is it's kind of like just a slightly different version of the exact same story. And I think that's what really draws our community together. And like a lot of you, I was apparently geriatric at 38 when I was married and trying to form a family. I've been diagnosed with endometriosis in my 20s in college and had 4 surgeries during my 20s. And then at 38, the scar tissue and all of the trauma that my body had gone through with the endometriosis caused both tubes to be blocked. And like Ashley, my only option was IVF. And I was told that the very first appointment with my reproductive endocrinologist that you had to go straight to IVF. And then we found out in that very first attempt at a cycle that I was a non-responder to the stimulation drugs. I stemmed for up, I think 32 days and just had one like alpha egg that would not allow any other eggs to grow. And so we had to go immediately to egg donation. And you know, everything that is hard when you are kind of a white person going through this process, if you are a woman of color, there's that added obstacle you have to climb, because finding a donor of color was extremely hard. I did not have hundreds of choices. I had 7. And it got to the point I remember telling my husband, she just has to be brown. Like, it doesn't even have to be black, just any iteration of brown, I will take. And it was just very frustrating. And then also, even with the egg donation, we did 9 IVF attempts. I had great success in getting pregnant and 0 success in carrying past my first trimester. And that takes a huge mental and physical toll on you as well. And I came into adoption because at the end of kind of like 4.5 years of all of this struggle, I woke up one day and it was no longer about being pregnant and like having a child. It was about being a parent. And I knew that that was my focus and that's what I had to make happen. We adopted our amazing son in 2014. I was at the birth, I got to cut the cord, and it was one of the most amazing experiences of my life. And also getting a chance to share my story through One More Shot, through Maya's documentary, I have to say, I live in Los Angeles. This is a celebrity heavy area. We are now, what, my 10 years past the documentary almost. I still get stopped on the street because people have seen that movie and people come up to me, and it let me know the power of sharing your stories, and especially as a woman of color. And there would be no book Dream Redefined without One More Shot, because I saw the power of storytelling, and I saw kind of the whole of the narrative of infertility, which tends to be very heteronormative, very racialized to kind of like white and affluent. And that is not kind of the reality of what infertility is. Almost twice as many women of color are infertile. And I really wanted to shine a light on those stories and those experiences, and not just Black women, Latino women, Asian women, Indigenous, Natives, First Nations women, and also LGBTQIA, because I feel that sometimes that narrative gets left out of this space. So the book is really a love letter, and it's a way to share our stories, because I think that's what the power is. In 2008, when I was diagnosed with infertility, I didn't have Gabrielle Union, I didn't have Michelle Obama, I didn't have any of those ladies to look through. I just had me, and I never saw another woman of color in 4.5 years in my doctor's waiting room. So it was really important to make sure that the space was inclusive for everybody. And I have to say, just looking at this panel, I see that, and that brings a lot of warmth to my heart. So again, I'm just thrilled to be here today, continuing to share my story.
Nobody kill me. I just have to add something to what Candace just said, because I just wrote a piece about it. National health statistics from research done in August 2013 show that Black women are half as likely as white women to seek or receive infertility care. And exactly the statistic you said, that they're twice as likely to deal with infertility. And so the reason I just wanted to call that out is you are doing such a great thing, because women like, especially Michelle Obama, when she came out with her book about her pregnancy losses, they saw an increase in African-American women going to the doctor. So if any of you are on the fence about going to a doctor, you're a woman of color, listen to Candace. I'm just backing up because, like I said, that statistic shocked me that they weren't as likely to see a doctor. So I just had to give you props for that.
Thank you. And you're beautiful, Tara.
Well, I will round this up. I am honored to be here with you amazing women. My story, like someone had said throughout, is very similar, yet what we do with our hurt seems to be different, yet overall the same picture, right? To advocate for those that are going to come behind us. So I even started tearing up a little bit when Jay was speaking, because the reason why I do what I do is so we can make the path better for those that are to come yet. And so my journey started with unexplained infertility as well. I was not open about what I was going through until I was forced to be open about it because of my job and where I worked. I had to be on call, and I was sneaking around, and it bit me one day, and I couldn't do that anymore. I had to be like, I have to be at this appointment at this day, at this time, because of this. And so it was just a really long journey through failing IUIs, taking a break, having mental breakdowns, our marriage being tried through the entire thing, and eventually leading us to changing clinics, because after failing 3 IUIs, my medical brain, so as stated earlier, my doctorate nurse practitioner, was like spinning. I was like, how can this be unexplained? Like, I don't get to write unexplained, insert whatever disease. Like, how is this unexplained? This is unacceptable is what this is. And so I found out from somebody that you can research clinics and know their success rates. And I found out that the clinic I was at was not doing so good. I was then educated on things to look for, not only success rates, but what goes into IVF. So we were looking at IVF and knowing that their labs have a lot to do with it. And yep, I might have to travel, mostly because I live in rural North Dakota. That's just normal. But knowing that if I'm going to do IVF, I want to do this the best way going forward. I know it's out of pocket. And so we ended up switching clinics because of success rates and I got a diagnosis finally too. So during our follow-up, he's like, you have endometriosis. It was found, he had like went through my medical records and found that like when I was in college and I had a cyst rupture and they were in there doing a laparoscopic procedure, they found endo. I did not like even know, I wasn't told that, or it was a big deal. It was stage 2 even. And so that changed the route that I took. I did some Depo-Lupron shots beforehand, before treatment, before transfer. And that was when I also found out about acupuncture and supplements and mental health care. At one point in my IUIs, I was told by a provider, actually, I back up. I had a miscarriage before going through IUIs and was told after that, when I'm crazy enough, we can talk about IUIs because I'm going to have to travel. I'm going to have to travel twice a month to this clinic. And I do realize that it's 120 miles one way, right? And I'm like, don't be calling people crazy when they just had a miscarriage a month ago. So I learned so much as a patient, as a healthcare provider going through this, and that I had some advocacy background with health policy for nurse practitioners prior to this. So fast forward, had our son through IVF. We have no remaining embryos. Our journey to this point is unknown for building our family. But about 4 to 6 weeks after having our son, I sat there holding him, and it just like a flood. I remember it. I can see it to this day. Came over me like, I have to do better for those. So I brought forward legislation in North Dakota to mandate insurance coverage in 2019, did again in 2021, and for fertility preservation. It was a huge, we are very conservative up here, but from 19 to this year, it was a huge shift forward. When it failed in 2019, I founded a nonprofit because I realized there was none. There's none in North Dakota, there's none in South Dakota, there was no support. I looked at, I had no one to go to, no support, no resources, no education, nothing. And so I wanted to create something, just a little something, in hopes of providing a little bit of hope and support for those going through it. And so we do work with legislation. It's only every other year in North Dakota. I've helped South Dakota. They're fighting surrogacy to keep it legal. It's mind blowing. But so I've really become an advocate, like Jay with Resolve. I do their advocacy days, and I'm just really using my voice the best of its ability to just create change on all levels. And then I took it, if COVID did one thing for me in the healthcare field, it was like, I need to shift and find what I'm passionate about. So I created a coaching and now telemedicine business that walks people through what I believe they should have before or when they're in the middle of any treatment at any stage, to just provide support, education, allow them a safe place to ask questions, to get real solid medical, all things advice, so they can stop Googling, because that was me, stop comparing protocols to what other people are doing, and really let me help navigate them to the right people, the right resources, and the right providers based on their specific healthcare case. So I think I echo what all these ladies said, is that you're not alone. We are all in this together, and just that you can move forward with whatever stage you're in with a little more peace than we all had at one stage when going through it.
Wow. Oh my gosh. Just you guys, the stories that and your journeys are, it's just amazing. I want to first, before I start asking questions, do any of you have any questions in your chat box? Or is there any attendees right now that would like to ask a question before I start? Okay. I just want to kind of piggyback off of what you said, Tara, about comparing yourself to others. I know me personally, I cannot stop doing that. That is one of the pitfalls that I feel like we fall into in this journey. Can you guys kind of go through what some of the other pitfalls are that, maybe if, we can shed a little light, then we can overstep that or go beyond and not make those same pitfalls?
What I see is, never in my medical career have I seen a group of individuals with a diagnosis have to really be their own healthcare provider to some level. Like, they are educated on everything from like medications to side effects to protocols to eating to this. Like, I wish to take a step back and be able to like relieve some of that from them, because you shouldn't have to do that. You should be able to confidently and be comfortable moving forward and not be doing some of that. So I think a big pitfall is becoming your own medical provider. I want to change that and like be your own advocate. So you have a little bit of knowledge, but like I think you just get in this Google lose sleep, reading groups after group after group, you're really like educating yourself and getting caught up in so many things that in turn just creates more stress for you.
Yeah, I agree. So two things I was going to say. Tara, you mentioned, being your own advocate and also, just Googling and Googling. And I think that it starts from a place of like wanting to find just a little bit of hope in someone else's story. And then you just go down this rabbit hole and it's like, oh, wow, this can happen. That can happen. Oh, wait, I might have this. And it just takes you spiraling and spiraling and spiraling. I think another pitfall is maybe feeling like you have to be loyal to a particular clinic because you stayed there, and just understand. It took me a long time to understand that during my journey, I needed different things from my medical team, right? So in the beginning, we were at one particular clinic and they were just I felt they were very aggressive in their approach. And I wasn't ready for that yet. And so I found another clinic where I felt like they had a little bit better, bedside manner. They took things slowly. They explained things a lot more to me. But then that ended up not working out for me. And I got to a point where, I just said, I want a baby, like give me a baby now. And so we ended up going back to that first clinic, and that's where we got pregnant. But just, realizing that you may need different things during your journey and being okay with walking away from a clinic and going to another one, and just doing your research, like Tara said.
I think one thing that I would add, at least because for me, and it's just really bizarre to think of now because I'm a very outgoing person, and transparent about a lot of things, but infertility, like you, Tara, I was really private about it the first year or two. And I think the pitfall for me was I took infertility as a personal commentary on me as a person. Like I felt like I was being punished, or I did something wrong, or I was a failure. I really personalized the infertility diagnosis. And something that I try to write about and say often when I'm talking to people is it is a medical issue, just like arthritis or diabetes or anything else. And you shouldn't, and I know it's so much easier said than done, but you shouldn't feel shame because it's just a medical issue. It is, the World Health Organization recognizes it as such. And right now, unfortunately, like Tara and I both have mentioned, only 19 states have passed fertility insurance coverage laws, and 13 of those laws include IVF coverage, and 10 states have fertility preservation. That's awful. The United States has way more states than 19. And the fact that insurance companies are not even recognizing infertility as a medical diagnosis definitely, I think, compounds your own personal feelings around it. So I just think, for me, something I wish I knew at the time was it's not me. I'm not being punished. I'm not doing anything wrong. It is a function of the body. I have no reason to feel shame or like a big failure, because that's exactly what I felt like at the time.
And I'll piggyback on that just because I think what that ends up resulting in is isolation, right? I think all of us had probably at some point withdrew from our peer group because everybody and their sister and their neighbor was, getting pregnant with their first, second, whatever. I had someone have their fit twins that were number 4 and 5 during my, and I was like, what? Like, no, wait up. Like, don't let me catch up here for a second. But I think this idea of loss is so huge, and just feeling like if you have that sense of shame, you then start to withdraw and you feel like nobody gets you, nobody understands you, you've lost your peer group. Advice people give usually isn't super helpful. But so I guess just to quickly comment that now there are a lot more supports now, and especially after COVID, so many virtual supports. Resolve does different things. So I think it's just finding your community, even if you need to be a little bit behind a screen or not showing your face or something like that, like that's okay. Because once you do that, and I found that too, once I started sharing, and I mean, I was the opposite. I wasn't at all quiet about this. I was like walking around town with a camera, right? Like, so it was kind of a different thing, but that helped me so much because I didn't feel as alone. And so I think that's such an important thing that we all say it, you're not alone, but you feel so alone the entire time. And so I think just really trying to connect and find your people and your supports in this process is such an important piece.
Absolutely. I'm gonna just pivot a little bit. You guys, your journeys are all so different. You know, some have IVF, Ashley, adoption, embryo. You know, at what point I think a lot of us struggle with, what do we do next? You know, I'm doing the IUI. The IUI is not working. Do I continue doing the IUI or do I move to the IVF? Okay, IVF's not working. Do I continue spending money through those cycles or do I move on to embryo donation or an egg donation or egg donor? It's like, how do you know when that moment is, or how did you know when that moment was to move on to the next thing instead of keep trying and trying and trying?
I think you really have to learn to listen to yourself. I mean, that's what it came down to for me, because everybody has got an opinion about what you're doing and where you are. Your family, your friends, your spouse in my case, because there was a time that like Tommaso and I were on the same page all the way through. And then it got to the point where I lost another pregnancy and we still had embryos left. So he's ready to do another transfer. And I'm like, no, we're done. We are done with this. We are moving on. And that caused a lot of tension in our marriage because we both wanted the same things, but we're at this complete divide on how to get there. And then do we move on and go to surrogacy because we have the embryos left? Do we move on and go to adoption? And what do we do with the embryos that are left? Like I'm just going to be so honest, like there was a lot of tension in the marriage that we loved each other dearly, wanted the exact same thing. We wanted a family, but then I'm ready to move on and he's thinking we can't give up. And so I really had to sit and think and have a talk about what is the difference between moving on, letting go, and giving up. They're very different, you know, and I had to get him to where I was, that we're not giving up on having a family. We are moving on to the way that we're going to do it. And we both had to come to terms and feel a lot of peace with that. And then of course, you know, we adopted our son and it's like, oh, we should have done this 4 years ago as soon as we found out I was infertile, because it's so easy to look back and think of all the different choices you would have made. You have to listen to yourself. Like for me, and this is in a support group, the question I get more than anything else, like, how do you know when to stop? For me, I honestly just woke up and I was done. I was just done. Like I just knew it. And like, I could not go through another pregnancy. I could not go through the 2-week wait. My body physically felt worn out from all of the loss. That is very traumatic physically. It's a lot of unrecognized grief because people expect you to just move on from a pregnancy loss. And, you know, I'm 10 years past my last miscarriage, and there's some mornings I wake up and that is just right in front of my face. And I feel it like I felt it the day I was bleeding over a toilet, you know? So society doesn't always recognize that the trauma of infertility can stay with you for a lifetime. Having my son did not cure my infertility. Like just adopting didn't make everything better. You have to hear your voice, your choice, what you need, and what's going to work for yourself. So my advice is really learn to listen to yourself. You will know. You will know.
My neck hurts from like nodding yes. Like you are your own best advocate and only you know when it's time to move on. I think it's really important to educate yourself of what your options are, because I don't think many know what that is going into it and what the statistics are of each treatment. And that's one thing I do on my blog and my podcast. Like IUI is literally 8 to 10% each round. Like, and as you do more and more and more, it goes into like even less percentage. So, you know, I think it's really just being alert and aware and what is your what does your finances look like too? Are you going to do 3 more rounds of IUI? Or are you going to save that money, do a consult for IVF, and then you can decide. So it's like getting your facts. What is the cost? How far do I have to travel? What are my options? What does this look like? Talking to some people who've been through it. And really, if you're going to research or, do that kind of searching and Googling, like do that kind of research to know what your options are, but really just, once again, finding someone who's probably been through it, or a group or somebody like a support group or a coach that can help navigate you and do all that up front for you too. But ultimately, when it comes down to it, you get to decide when to say no and what's the next best step.
I actually have a question in the chat box. Mikkel wants to know how you found your support group. She's at the beginning of her journey and she wants to find a community now versus later. So she wants her tribe.
I'll answer
Resolve
that.
has a web page that you can go to of support groups. They're all virtual. They've been virtual since COVID, but Resolve does have a whole list on their website. I could try to find the link and put it in the chat, where there are support groups near you. But also there are different support groups, to everyone's point, about like if you've had pregnancy loss. There are other sets of, like, even endometriosis, PCOS. I guess what I'm saying is you have a lot of options in terms of the support that you think you need, more specifically, or if you need all of them. So Resolve definitely is the first place that I think of. And there's a lot of Facebook groups, but also, as odd as it sounds, Twitter was like a really huge help for me. Like there are a lot of people that were on Twitter that had like pseudonyms. Like I'm trying to think of one, Slackio, instead of using her real name, so you can find them. And that was a really big community as well. Oh, thank you, whoever just posted that link. Find a support group right there. And in case you don't have one in your area, you can start one. I mean, I did that, and that was fantastic. So there definitely is a lot of support out there.
Since we're having questions in the chat box, are there any other questions that you'd like to ask the panelists? Okay, well, we'll move on with the questions. We have about, I know it's 45 minutes and it's going by really quickly, so we have about 7 more minutes left. I want to ask you all, what piece of advice would you leave for someone who is either just starting on their journey, or they are a warrior and they are, still in that battle, trying to move forward? What piece of advice would you leave for them?
Maybe I'll start. I mean, I don't know if I'm in the place of giving too much advice, but I think, it's been talked about, just educating yourself, getting the information. And for me, when I work with my clients, sometimes we really talk about zooming the lens out for a second. I think when you get in the fertility space, it's like your life falls down this abyss, right? You're just like, and you're in it. Think about the ultrasound, right? You're in it to each cell. You're just like so in it. And sometimes it's remembering that this piece of life, or this piece of your life, is going to be significant, but a specific moment in time for a much larger trajectory. And that if you can sometimes like take a deep breath and pull the lens back a little bit so you can see the bigger picture, and take the time to educate yourself so you can make decisions. That's sort of the impetus for the company that I started, Empower, with Moxie. And we have a booth if anybody's interested in embryo donation. That's a place to get education too. But it's sort of specific. But if you zoom the lens out and you can kind of see, I do have options, and this might not work, but there are other things that I might not feel super open to in this moment, but that's part of the process. It's understanding, and I don't want to say trust the process, because it's super annoying to hear something like that, but trust that you'll move through this, and this isn't going to be your life forever, right? That was my mantra for like 2 years. This is not going to be like this forever. I'm not going to be doing this when I'm 50. I'm not going to be doing this when I'm 50. Like, I just kept saying that to myself. But I think these moments where you could just take a step back and go, okay, I'm so deep in the weeds. Can I just get the bigger picture? Can I change the goalposts a little bit? Can I think about the idea of parenting, like Candace said, as opposed to, will this next thing work, and so just taking that time to take care of yourself and see it all for what it is, and know that as painful and terrible as it can be, I think all of us here are testament to, one, you survive in some way, two, you figure it out, and three, it's life changing, and for like a lot of us in positive ways too. That is terrible as it is, I think we've all learned things about ourselves, about how to be parents in a different way, perhaps about our relationships, and about how to speak up for ourselves, right? So I think we've all learned a lot from our journeys, even though they were terrible.
I've known Maya for a long time. By the way, if you haven't seen her documentary, you have to. It is a must. You'll just, it's amazing and inspirational and just wonderful. So just, she's not going to plug her movie, but I will. It's really very good. And I know that a lot of you relate, but exactly, Maya, I was going to say, like in my head, because the thing that I always say is sometimes it's not if you'll be a parent, it's how. And when you start looking at the how, then all of the possibilities open up. And I think that's one of my main pieces of advice. And that doesn't necessarily mean you'll have to go to anything extreme. It could be that you just need to explore something called PGTA, which is genetic testing for embryos, or it may be endometrial receptivity analysis, or it may be adoption or surrogacy or donor eggs or donor embryos. But when you kind of are like, wait, it's not if I'm going to be a parent, it's how, and you then kind of, as exactly as Maya said, you not only are exploring all your options, but you're widening the lens to know that there are so many paths to parenthood, and you just have to figure out what one works for you and what you feel the most comfortable with. And to me, that was always, like Maya was saying, I remember always being like, this is not forever, but I always would say, this is not if, it's just how. I just have to figure out the how I'm going to get to where I want to be. And that made me feel better.
To piggyback off that is,
Sorry.
what is that it can change. Know that what you might say you never will do or never will consider will shift and change, and that's okay. Like, just expect that. Just like maybe when you went to college, you didn't come out with the same degree. The same is with infertility treatments. So just be open, know your options, and most importantly, know your feelings are valid and that your story matters and that you are worthy of all that you're going through. Like, don't second guess it, or it could be worse, or so-and-so has it worse. Do not compare what you're going through right now. It sucks and it's real and it hurts, and there's no comparing. You're allowed to feel that way. Just find some support and find yourself a great community, which was shared in the comments.
So I totally agree with everything that everyone else has said already. I am a Christian and strong believer in God. And my bit of advice that I will leave you with is, no matter what the circumstances look like, continue to believe that you will achieve what you want, because God is a promise keeper, and it may not look how you want it to look, but you will get what he has promised you. So just continue to keep your faith and stay the course. And it will happen, whether it's through adoption or surrogacy or pregnancy, but just continue to keep your faith.
I will just say in the last 20 seconds here that it's all authentic. No one is more of a mother or more of a parent based on how their family came into being or how they have their child. It is all authentic. These are all authentic experiences. And once your child is here, it will not matter how they got there. It matters that you're a family.
Well, amazing, you guys. This has been wonderful. I wish we had made this session longer because I feel like it's just a wealth of knowledge and experience. And man, I'm probably going to reach out to you guys for another session. And maybe we can do like a live or something. I want to thank everyone for joining us today. It's been wonderful. Thank you to all of our panelists. And we look forward to many more sessions for the remainder of the day. And you guys have a great one. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.